Hello, and good evening, I suppose. Welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club for the month of March. It's a crazy month, isn't it? Everybody's locked in their houses, and this was supposed to be an in-person thing. We had the flights all arranged, and everything was going to happen, and now we're here. It's just me and Jordan, and Emma's in the room as well. No, it's okay. Don't say I'm sorry, Emma. It's fine. And we're here to talk about a fantastic book, An Embarrassment of Witches. I loved this book so much. Were you doing? You did. Obviously, you guys were working in comics before you did Embarrassment.
Yeah. So we first foray that I really had into comics was with Jen when we were doing Darwin Carmichael is Going to Hell, which was this webcomic that we did between 2009 and 2013. And so we wrote that together and I drew it. And then, after we finished that, by the time that we were finishing that, I was in grad school at the Center for Cartoon Studies. And then I went on to do a couple books on my own. I did one with Ad House called The Oven, and then I did House of Women with Fantagraphics. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in that timeline, we started talking about like the next book that we wanted to do together, and we started writing it. And Jen was doing off being a grad student and doing important medieval digging.
I was. Darwin ended right around the time when I was pitching my dissertation prospectus, which is like the last part of your coursework before you go off and do independent writing. And so Darwin ended at a pretty good time, I think, for the both of us, because we both had things that we were working on. But then as I got further and further into the dissertation process, which is pretty unstructured, and it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, it can be very unrewarding in the day-to-day. And we started this project sort of in the midst of that, and it became actually something that made me more productive at my dissertation, because there was something that came easily and was fun and was not stressful, which made it a little bit easier to sort of float through the tough writing.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. How do you two work together to write a script together? What's the process of that?
Well, it's interesting because in all of the years that we've been writing together, which is over 10 years now, 12 years maybe, we spent maybe about a year of those 12 years in the same city. And otherwise we've been in different states or different countries, working with different time zones. And so we've developed a completely synchronous but sort of dislocated writing process where we have set online times where we would write, and it was done entirely in Google Drive. So we would have brainstorming sessions where we would plot out the individual pages or arcs, and then once we had a kind of rough outline in place, we would choose pages to work on. And so I would write pages like 5 through 10, and Sophie would work on like 10 through 15, and we would bang out our first drafts on our own. And then when each of us was done respectively, we would swap and do edits on each other. And so we developed this really interesting collaborative process where we actually never had to be in the same place. And I think, it's funny because when we were starting this book, when we were starting Embarrassment of Witches, our first brainstorming session happened while Sophie was in New York City. She was, you were cat sitting for somebody. I can't remember who.
Oh yeah, I actually was cat sitting for Bob Skoriak and Creota Wilberg, so I was like in a home of comics.
That was so nice.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting at a table with you and I'm being like, I actually don't think I could do this with Sophie in the room. Like, I think we need to be in rooms alone on opposite sides of the country or opposite sides of the world.
The next question I have here is from a Michael Goldstein, which was, did a lot of what you read as a kid and teenager have a big impact on coming up with later ideas for your own books, Sophie?
Sophie.
Well, Dad, let me address this question. Yes, I would say absolutely it did. One of the conversations that I had with my father at one point, when I was younger, he would take me to these used bookstores, and I would just like get like these stacks of books, most of which were like schlocky fantasy books by like Piers Anthony, just to give you an indication of the level at which this is working at. And then he would always he would always try and push me towards like novels and stuff, so I'd get my vegetables essentially. But at one point I remember him saying, I finally get like where all those books you read paid off. Like I see where how those books that you read as a kid like turned into the work that you're making now, and that was really nice to hear. So I definitely think that being allowed to buy fantasy books helped my development as a creator down the road. Thank you.
Good job, Dad.
All right.
How much did your work, Jen, in history inform your writing here?
Oh, a fair degree, I would say. That's something that was pretty consistent from Darwin as well. I've been in a program for medieval history. I'm getting a PhD for the past 10 years. It's a little bit too long, but it's been a good 10 years. And I've been really interested in medieval myth. And so Darwin had a lot of weird medieval animals that I had encountered in my research in it that were sort of like Darwin's friends or people who would show up at parties, and they kind of populated the background. And for this project, I remember wanting to sort of tap into a different set of medieval knowledge, like something that could inform the story in a slightly different way. And I think that's how we kind of fell into the cryptozoology idea for the lab where Angela works with Rory's mother. Because there's a really interesting tradition in medieval literature and sort of the medieval construction of knowledge about fake plants. And they're usually often found side by side with all of the sort of fake mythological animals. And so we started to tap into that, and that's where the lambs of Tartary come from, the lambs that grow on bushes. In the Middle Ages, they believed that there were these plants that could basically grow lambs for you, so you could have like a plant source of wool. And the lab is using that to try and create like a vegan meat source. We had also the barnacle geese, which are like another really good fake medieval plant. There's a lot of like animals growing on trees in medieval culture. They were geese that would basically form from the limbs of trees and fall down into the water where they would swim away, or onto land where they would break their necks and then become food for you. And so I think, I've always really liked to incorporate the medieval stuff that I read into this, because grad school can feel like a silo. Like it can really be a very isolating experience where you're spending a lot of time alone in a room with like a lot of weird books that you and like 3 other people have read in the last 150 years. And so it was a fun way to make that stuff feel a little bit more alive and relevant for me, and to kind of share what I was working on with other people.
Do you, either of you, have a Patreon or a someplace that we can plug right now that'll help you going forward?
I have a Patreon, which I'm going to find the exact. I think it's if you look up my name, Sophie Goldstein,
Yep.
You'll be able to find it. And I think the URL is patreon.com. Yeah, it's patreon.com/Sophie Goldstein.
Nice.
So I'm pretty easy to find, and I serialized this whole book on there while during production with like process art and stuff like that. And as I make more comics, they'll all be on there. So I And I love my Patreon community and the feedback I get there. So I would love it if people would consider backing me on there.
I endorse this. Jen, you have something?
You can look at my Twitter. I don't make any money from it, but it
Yeah.
will entertain you probably.
Yeah.
It's at Jen Lynn Jordan, Jen with 2 N's, Lynn Jordan. I tweet a lot about just dumb things that happen to me and my cats, and also medieval history. There's a lot of medieval history on there. So
Nice, I like that. It's a great book, and we love cartoonists and we love creators, and this is what we're trying to do. So thank you guys, Jen and Sophie, for coming and being part of this. So thank you all, and we'll see you next month.
thank you.
Thanks, bye.